It's 7:30 on 7/7, Thursday. We will call the Economic Development Authority meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call.
Bevins.
Here.
Beezer.
Here.
Kirsch. O'Day.
Here.
Yeager. Johnson.
Here. And next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Looking to approve it, Tony?
I have a motion to move 6A above 5B.
And approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the agenda with moving 6A above 5B. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the commission, will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Move to adopt, Bevins. Second.
Motion by Bevins, second by O'Day to adopt the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Bevins.
Yes.
Beezer.
Yes.
Kirsch.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda, old business. 5A is discussion of commercial and office uses, Tier 1 underutilized parking lots, and Tier 2 Washington Street corridor. Is Jennifer here digitally or?
Virtually.
Yeah, virtually. She's virtually here.
Good morning. I'm virtually here.
Yeah.
So this morning I have a fairly lengthy report that's in your packets. Unlike last time, I'm not going to go through the full report this time. And really, I just want to kind of highlight a few of the items that are in here. If you guys recall at our last meeting, we had a conversation about the underutilized parking lots. I did a fairly lengthy presentation about the residential demands that might be in the downtown area. And part of that conversation, a couple of the commissioners requested, you know, what about the retail spaces? We had designed or identified in each of our development capacity analyses the potential that there might be some retail or office or some type of commercial use on the main floors. So the question was, well, what does that mean for retail? What's our office environment like? And so the information that's in your packet this evening, or not this evening, it's morning, I promise, but this morning is really about sort of those retail, commercial types of uses and what types of demands there might be. So with that, I'm going to go into the report and just highlight a couple items in here. And then obviously, if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to stop me. And I'm just going to scan through on my side to make sure I can see it. So I broke the report off into 3 different sections, essentially the first one being sort of those general market conditions. The general market conditions are really fairly local to what's going on in the city of Brainerd and the surrounding area, but it also expands a little bit out because what's happening from a state perspective and what's happening from also a national perspective obviously will have an impact on your retail, commercial, office types of demands over the next 5 to 10 years. So we talked a little bit about it at the last meeting, the idea that there's this push for work from home or a hybrid approach. That also has an impact on the retail sector from the standpoint of a lot of folks are now transitioning to not necessarily visiting bricks and mortar types of stores and more doing their shopping online. Interestingly enough, that shift is more dominant in places like the Twin Cities, a little bit less dominant in places like Outstate, Brainerd, Mankato, those types of areas, but we're still seeing a fairly significant shift from a retailer or a shopper demand perspective. So as that shift occurred, the demand for bricks and mortar has gone down. So a lot of times pre-pandemic, we did a lot of analysis that was based on how many square feet per person could a city or an area support. And those metrics are still valid, but they are shifting a bit and we're not exactly sure how they're going to play out. So I did include in your packets this morning a cheat sheet, or what I call a cheat sheet, from the standpoint of it gives you a sense of when a retailer is looking for space, how many people, what's the population, sort of what's the trade area that a retailer might look for in order to cite a new store. Obviously, the chains that are listed here are just easily identifiable in terms of you've probably all seen them, you've been to them, or at least you're familiar with them, so you can get a sense of, all right, if I'm interested in attracting users of this size or this type, what's the trade area, what's the population that we need in order to support that? So the other thing people oftentimes ask me about this cheat sheet, I've presented it a couple times to a couple different places, is, all right, so if one of these stores locates in my community, does that mean another one of the stores would choose not to locate here? And the reality is no. They may question it. They may make sure that there's a growth projection. They may, check various metrics, but essentially you might have 2 or 3 of the same types of stores that still locate, even though, they're only meeting that 10,000 person population or whatever it is. So I provided this just as the cheat sheet just to give you a sense of, depending on what types of users you're looking at, where would they be most attracted to, and how much from a size, from a lot perspective, acreage perspective are they looking for, and for a population perspective are they looking for. As I said, this cheat sheet is really used data that was compiled pre-pandemic. We do know that there has been quite a bit of a shift, but generally retailers are still kind of following this at this point because at the end of the day, we don't exactly know how the pandemic is going to affect it and what exactly is going to happen from a bricks and mortar perspective. So that's one piece I wanted to highlight. The other thing that I think is a little bit interesting is per Minnesota deed, your retail demand has actually not decreased to the same extent as it has in other regions or other parts of the state. That's kind of an interesting metric or characteristic of Brainerd from the perspective of down here in the Twin Cities, we see a lot of vacant and empty storefronts. That's not as much the case up in Brainerd and the Lakes area. So the retail trade sector does not and has not been hit quite as hard. It remains to be seen whether or not that's because it's lagging behind or whether or not you truly have a different set of characteristics happening in your market area. So from a retail perspective, that's a general overview of what's happening, both nationally, sort of the state, and then what's happening locally. From an office perspective, we talked quite a bit about this at the last meeting, but there are a couple of points that I think are interesting to point out with respect to Brainerd today, which is that you really have more of a core sort of downtown office environment that doesn't exist in other parts to the same extent of the Brainerd Lakes area or the region. I think that will continue to be a differentiator for you long-term because the government complex or center area, if you will, is not going to go anywhere. As a result of that, that sort of attracts more workers, more office types of users. So there's sort of that critical mass that already exists in Brainerd that doesn't exist in other parts or surrounding communities. So from that perspective, I think you have a key differentiator when it comes to the office environment. And you can see when we get into the market data or what's active today that there's actually a pretty big difference between Brainerd and the rest of the communities or some of the very immediate surrounding communities. So what we, again, don't totally know is what's going to happen from the hybrid model perspective. A lot of even government types of jobs are starting to explore ways to do hybrid. Whether that happens in Brainerd and the Brainerd Lakes area remains to be seen, but that obviously could shift how many people are coming into downtown Brainerd every single day, depending on how that goes, which again has an impact on the retail environment because the more workers you have, the more likely they are to, for example, seek out a restaurant on their lunch hour or shop at the local stores over their lunch hour, those types of things. So we'll see how that plays out, but generally speaking, I think when you compare Brainerd to the region, you really do have a key differentiator when it comes to office in particular. Finally, we talked a little bit about the consumer analysis piece at the last meeting. the good news in Brainerd is that you guys do have a very large, sort of diverse mix of business types and retail types of businesses already. Generally, that's a good thing from the standpoint of diversity begets diversity, for lack of a better way of saying it. If you've got one very homogeneous type of retailer, for example, sometimes you don't attract more businesses or different types of businesses. When you have diversity, it basically means all business opportunities are on the table. That's generally a good thing. So a lot of times we always think that competition is maybe not the best thing, but a lot of times retailers actually look for that competition, and they look for example, is there an anchor type of store in the area? And then some of those smaller retailers that are local will actually choose to locate there because they get the foot traffic of those that are sort of visiting the area. So the last thing, which we talked about at the last meeting, was this idea that the Gen Zs and the millennials are really looking at, they like this sort of downtown environment, which you have in spades. So from that perspective, I think your downtown, the commercial retail also has the opportunity to attract more of the workers of that population or those generations also. So I think there's a really good dynamic that's happening, especially if we can leverage that and continue to move that forward. So we did do a current inventory of your businesses. There's 2 graphics that are in your packet this evening. Or I keep saying evening. I obviously haven't had enough coffee yet this morning. So we did both the downtown and Washington Street. We did that for a reason. Even though they have very different feelings to them, if you will, the retail market, especially when you look at that cheat sheet, is going to capture the majority of Brainerd all in one. So from that perspective, we have to kind of look at the trade area as a whole to try to figure out what types of users and what types of demands are there. So we did the inventory of both, even though a new business, for example, may much more desire downtown over Washington Street, or vice versa, for various metrics, associated with their business that they evaluate. So we did the inventory of both to make sure that we had an understanding of how many businesses, where are they located, where are certain types of businesses clustered, et cetera. So that's why there's both of those, even though I know Washington Street isn't really part of our tier 1. It very much interacts with what we might choose to do, for example, on those underutilized parking lots. So those 2 inventories are in there. Obviously, what you can see is there's very distinct patterns that occur in both areas. The types of businesses that sort of cluster together, there's a pattern that gets established, which I think becomes very clear, especially when you start looking at the color-coded dots that are on those 2 maps. Finally, we did a little bit of active listing research to see, well, how much space is actually on the market today? Do we have a huge surplus of space, either on the Washington Street corridor or in downtown? And then also what's happening primarily in Baxter, because to be honest with you, the number of listings in other areas like Nisswa, for example, are just very small. So Baxter is really the other very close proximity sort of area that we have to look at from a market perspective. We have a fair amount of space that's on the market right now, either as an active for sale listing or for lease. But there were a couple of things that stood out to me from this perspective, which is Baxter, for example, has several sort of retail strip mall types of spaces that are available, whereas Brainerd has some of the older, building reuse types of spaces available. That's not surprising given the age of your development versus the age of the development in Baxter. But if we start to think about, once again, sort of this idea of, the local businesses, the artisan businesses, smaller office spaces, those types of things, it really starts to really kind of reinforce the fact that Brainerd has has a leg up or it can differentiate itself from the types of spaces that exist in Baxter. Baxter has a lot more retail space that's available, although there is one major, obviously vacant big box space that's kind of dominating a lot of their space that's available. But anyway, so from that perspective, if you look at your spaces, if you look at where they are, the key thing that I think stands out from the underutilized parking lot analysis that we did at our last meeting is that the spaces that are available today are relatively small. They're very, the footprints of them are small. That's not bad. They're also older types of buildings. And so from that perspective, if we were to bring new retail space online, there's a couple things that we would have to consider. First of that being that if it's in a new building, the cost per foot of that lease space is probably going to be higher than what is currently on the market in sort of these older buildings. So we have to be cognizant of that and how that works. It's much the same as the conversation we had at the last meeting of, will there be a gap? Meaning, will the retailers or the users actually be able to afford the space because it's a new building? Much like, will the rents support the build cost? So we need to do a little bit more digging into what those costs are and sort of get a sense of what would you have to pay from a cost per foot in the new spaces, and is that realistic for businesses in this area? But the positive is it would be new space, which would attract a different type of user. The other piece is we've got, I think in our opportunity spaces, we looked at somewhere between 4,500 and 10,000 square feet approximately. And so those spaces actually for Brainerd are bigger than what are currently available on the market. So if we had a user that needed more space, there would actually be space available, as opposed to right now, we're kind of limited because those spaces are very small in their footprints. So while there's space on the market, the new spaces that we would look at would potentially be developed as part of any redevelopment effort. They would compete, but they would be very different from the standpoint of cost, they're sort of the tenant improvement capacity perspective, et cetera. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a slam dunk if you do new retail or new commercial spaces on sort of those main floors in downtown. But I think there's some opportunities, particularly if we leverage the strengths that already exist in Brainerd, and we sort of really tailor our approach to attracting the types of businesses that would support sort of that downtown Main Street environment. So that's a really, really brief, well, you probably don't think it's that brief, but it's a brief overview of what's in the packets this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's a lot of information that's in there. So I will pass it back to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Are there any questions? I just noted one thing, Jennifer. You missed an opportunity here. We had on the Washington Street business inventory. You started on the east bank of the river, and then you went all the way to Dairy Queen. But you started with Harmony Massage and Spa when you could have started with Dairy Queen. So Washington Street could have been from Dairy Queen to Dairy Queen, and that would have been fun.
Well, we could do that. I think it says draft, so I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
We'd be
let's
happy
get the river Dairy Queen in there. All right.
We can do that.
Mr. Chair,
He's here to
is it
detail.
possible you're looking for something to do at night?
Maybe. But I really appreciate this, Jennifer. The analysis is great. The business inventory is really nice. So thanks for putting that together for us. We have no other questions or comments. Mike?
I just wanted to comment. I read through this a couple times. I thought it was really valuable information. I think this is stuff that we've been looking for a while, just to be able to look at this and analyze what we have, what we might need. Experience-based was a really big thing that caught my interest, because we've had an arcade move into downtown, Big J's Pizza Arcade, smashing success in the last, 2 years? Mm-hmm. And now we have The escape room that just opened. I think there's something right next to that. Is there a virtual reality or something like that moving in?
Recruiting one.
Possibly. So I think that's a big step in the right direction if we can keep attracting things like that. But it's always good to just be able to see what we have and what we need. So thank you for all that information.
You're welcome.
All right, seeing no other comments, we'll move to the next item. Thank you, Jennifer. The next item is 6B. We moved up above 5B, so we're gonna consider funds for marketing for the Deed Main Street program. Nope, 6A, we moved above 5B. Discussion on ARPA funds for matching funds. Jennifer, is that you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So as you know, the city of Brainerd received about $1.5 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds. Chair Johnson asked if the council would consider allocating a portion of those funds to be used as a matching grant for the Deed Main Street Revitalization Program. In the subcommittee meeting, one of the things that was discussed was that there may be some small businesses that don't have the cash available to come up with that match. They may have that money that they can make payments, but as far as the match for that 70% that's required with the Deed Main Street program, they may not have that cash available. So the City Council did authorize $80,000 in ARPA funds. In addition, the Brainerd HRA also allocated $20,000 out of their general fund also to be used as matching grants. So what we're just asking the EDA today is to allocate this $100,000 to be used as matching grants for the Deed Main Street Revitalization Program.
So looking for a motion, I suppose.
So moved, Bevins.
Second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by O'Day to authorize the use of the $80,000 of City of Brainerd funds and $20,000 of Brainerd HRA funds to be used as a grant match on this Deed Main Street Revitalization Program. Is there any discussion?
I have one question. For this matching grant, is it all going through the same application?
It is, and it's identified in the application that the subcommittee will ultimately make the decisions. It is two people up to $100,000 for a total project cost, but priority is being given to total project costs under $50,000 and included in the application.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I would just say that we will have the final authority decision making. We'll get a recommendation from the subcommittee here. Any other discussion on the ARPA funds for matching grants? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. That brings us to 5B, approval of application for the Deed Main Street Revitalization Program. Jennifer, Tyler?
Yeah, so we sent the application, all of the recommendations through to the EDA or the subcommittee. We did get some comments last night from Marie late last night. So we have time to make some small changes. So some small changes were requested for the application. Deed or the Initiative Foundation and Deed have not signed their agreement at this point. So they plan to. I think it's based on Don Hickman's emails to Jennifer and I. It seems like it's just some language issues right now, but we can't turn this on until the Initiative Foundation says go. They are the holder of these funds, so we have the application, we have everything, it's ready to go. We'll make the small changes that Marie had suggested last night, so we'll certainly get those updated today, and we're ready to go. As soon as the Initiative Foundation says the money's there and they've signed their agreements, we're ready to go. I just wonder, I'll ask this question to the group, and I guess Marie's on the subcommittee, Jennifer's on the subcommittee. We had a timeline established, and the timeline was established to keep the application period open from essentially today through the 15th of August. Do we need to modify the dates of the open application? I'm looking to anybody to,
Marie?
I would say yes, because we want to keep the same window of time. So if we can just stipulate that it's based on whenever, Initiative Foundation gets the go-ahead, it's that period from that point forward. I don't know if that messes up anything with the rest of our timeline for things, but I think it makes sense to keep the maximum amount of time for people to submit applications.
okay. It shouldn't. It's, that timeline was established based on the Initiative Foundation's initial date that they had set for when they wanted to make sure that the funds were out of their office. So obviously with them not signing the contract at this point, it does extend their window a little bit. So we're fine. We'll have to adjust the dates because the dates are listed to close on the 15th, but we'll keep a consistent timeline. We'll keep the same number of days in place with the open application window.
Yeah, I think it's about, 50 days from today to August 15th, so nobody opposes that, right? Keep the window open 50 days. The timer doesn't start until they sign this agreement, if and when they ever sign the agreement, so we're kind of working ahead of them here, so I think, 50 days, more or less, whatever we have for a window now, let's keep that.
Would, the other thing that I would look for from this group is to just authorize us to turn it on as soon as we receive notification from the Initiative Foundation, and then we'll just keep the range consistent.
Absolutely. Any opposition to that?
Because it should come to, I suppose, to Jennifer and I, we'll know when they've signed the agreement, so.
Yeah, I would turn it on then and then send out an email to, the commission, the council, any local businesses, let's get the word out.
Yeah, and that kind of refers back to the marketing piece as well, so we'll want to make sure that whatever marketing goes out has the dates consistent with it, but we're ready to go. We can turn it on today. We're just waiting for the Initiative Foundation at this point.
Excellent. It's good to be working ahead of them instead of behind them. Mike?
Just curious what changes Marie had suggested.
Just some wording. The guidelines ask for like a state and federal ID, and I just said it should say tax ID, and then a little bit more clarification on one of the bullet points that was saying that a requirement was for matching. I just felt like the wording was still a little confusing, so just clarifying that the applicant needs to have 70% of the funds for a match. Trying to remember what else. I think in the application itself, I just didn't know if we needed the applicant to opt in to requesting those like matching funds from the ARPA or HRA. I know there's just kind of a description of like, hey, you can ask for this, but I don't know if I can't remember from subcommittee discussions if we just decided like we'll just evaluate them on a case-to-case basis, or if we want the applicant to actually opt in and say like, yes, I would like to be considered for these funds. So.
It was based on the conversation from subcommittee. It was to remain open for anybody to, even if you had the funding, if you wanted to request funds from this, or the subcommittee would make decisions and just.
I don't know if anybody would opt out, but I guess we don't want to award funds to people that maybe don't want to receive it, although I don't know. I don't know of a situation where that would be the case, but I guess I'm fine either way. I just wanted to raise the point.
Yeah. Yep. And then the other item on there is the map is, so we've modified and updated the River to Rail map with WIDSETH, and they've pulled everything, basically markers out of there, but you had asked to see if we could
I just want it to look a little prettier and like be a little more clear on like where the boundaries are, just so, because that's a visual that a lot of people are going to be looking at to figure out if they're in the boundaries. So just making sure the lines around it are really clear on what those streets are, and labeling the map so that if it's going out by itself, it's clear what the map is referring to.
We'll have to see what WIDSETH can do with it. We can keep working on it. The descriptor of what the streets are is listed in there. It's, the map is, at the end of the day, the map's a visual, but we can see if there's some more. We'll mess with it a little bit this morning and see what more we can do with it.
I just could see questions arising as to what the boundaries are, so just save yourself some time and put.
We're going to get questions for those that are outside the boundary.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. They're going to come. But
My zip code's 56401. How do I get the money?
I think we ran through that with what's inside the city limits and what's not.
I don't think it's a bad thing to get applications from outside the boundaries, at least then you know what people are trying to do.
But I think, I agree with Marie on this, that I think it's important that we let the businesses on the north side of Washington Street or the south side of Oak Street make it clear that they understand that they are in the River to Rail Zone, not, the street isn't the boundary, but the next parcel out is within the boundary. Because there are a lot of businesses that could be confused by that.
Yeah, and based off of her map up here, you know, it's that when you get near the East Brainerd Mall, everything's out up there. So
Yep.
that's where we're gonna get questions, I'm sure, but that's okay. The last thing, if I can comment, great catch by Connie and Jennifer on the use of those ARPA funds, because as you guys read the language in this, federal and state dollars cannot be used for matching dollars, but because you allocated them as lost revenue, I believe, it basically cleansed those dollars. So it makes it legal for the city and then to use those $80,000. So that's a heck of a catch. So, and maybe Chairman Johnson caught that, but good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, nobody else has found that. So, of the other cities that the
He's
Initiative
looking for a good
Foundation.
way to launder money, Tyler.
It is. Good work.
Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. So Marie, on yours, first of all, I sent an email to the EDA, so you have Marie's comments. Secondly, I think your suggestion maybe is to have a checkbox. Are you interested in the matching funds? Check yes or no. So I'm sure that's a change that Bladek can make to the application. And then the other thing I just want to say is that even though DEED and the Initiative Foundation don't have this agreement done yet, I thank you to the hard work of the subcommittee. We met a couple of times because we are ready to pull the trigger and get these applications out right away. As you know, the Initiative Foundation has $4.5 million. There is potential that if we use our $765,000, that we potentially could have access to additional funds. So this is great. We are ready to go, and I don't believe any other community in the Initiative Foundation's deed grant application is prepared like we are.
I had one other question. Does this need to go to Initiative Foundation to review the application at all to make sure it meets their needs, or they kind of just gave it to us to
Correct.
push forward?
Yep. Don's in our office a couple times a week, so we've chatted with him. He's perfectly fine with this. He still thinks it's a little too long, but we're okay with the length of it. It's not bad when you're obviously in the electronic format. It's really good. So we're ready to go.
Great.
I think 24 questions is too long. Well, 27 if you include your name and the date.
Two hard ones.
So the application is in our packet. Does anybody on the commission have any changes, recommendations, questions about the application? No, so then I guess we're looking for a motion to approve it
So moved, Kelly.
Second.
as including the changes Marie had put in.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. That brings us to the next item, old business, approval of consider funds for marketing for the Deed Main Street program. Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. When the subcommittee met, we really talked a lot about marketing and how we get the word out to the property owners within the River Trail corridor. Talked about a mailer. Mary Devine Johnson is on the subcommittee, and she graciously agreed to take a look and get some prices on marketing. So she reached out to 3 local printing companies, Allegra First Impressions and Lakes Printing. Lakes Printing was the lowest for a little shy of $1,300. And according to Mary, the easiest way to accomplish this is every door direct mailer, which I had never heard of. So in order to kind of target mail, it's pretty costly, but this every door direct, the mailman or woman gets a stack and hands them out as they go on their route. So what we're asking for, and then Lakes Printing would design the mailer, and they would charge $50 an hour. So as talking this through with Mary, our thought was the $1,300 for the actual printing of the mailer and the postage, then an additional $350 $450 to be able to have Lakes Printing actually design this mailer. So we're just asking that you authorized up in amount not to exceed $1,750. This is an unbudgeted expense. However, there is money in the fund balance to be able to cover this.
Move to approve, Kelly.
Second, Beazer.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Beazer to approve
1,750.
17, amount not to exceed, under any circumstances, 1750. Is there any discussion?
I hope this is an effective way to reach businesses and get the word out about this. I'm a little on the fence about whether people are just gonna get it in the mail and throw it in the trash, but I'm curious if there's any way we can, on the mailer or something, just have them indicate that that's how they heard about it. So for future opportunities where we're looking to market this way, we know how effective this method was. That's my only thought. I just don't know if there's a way for them to write in on the application or somehow just indicate that that's how they heard about the.
A 28th question?
Add one more on there. What's one more?
Careful, too many questions.
I mean, 200 grand's nice, but 28 questions?
That was my concern too, is that I think it's the best way to reach, we don't have everybody's email. We can't send them an email every single day for free, but I throw away junk mail if it looks like junk mail. So as long as it doesn't look like junk mail, I don't know if we put a big city emblem on it or something to indicate that it's super important.
Free money.
Yeah.
Yeah, free money remember that guy who had the suit with the dollar
Yeah,
bills
put
on
him-
it?
put his face
Put
on
him
there.
on there, it'll look totally legit.
You like money?
I have one
I
question.
have a tendency to flush more junk emails. I have a tendency to flush more junk emails accidentally.
I don't
than
even
not.
open them. Right, Tony?
Are we putting up poster boards downtown for the businesses that are thinking about moving to downtown versus the ones that are already here? To capture that new market with these funds?
That has not come up. It's an interesting comment. I don't know.
I know there's been informal discussions with, for DDBC, like we know we're gonna be probably hitting the pavement and going out and talking to businesses, and if we could get some funds for some advertising, for just some print posters, that would be awesome.
I just think hitting the people that aren't downtown as well with a poster board or some sort of signage would be beneficial.
Any ideas where?
Probably at the intersection of, well, downtown, but then at the intersection of 6th and maybe Laurel, because you have to stop there.
I have an idea, Tony.
What?
I know the guy who has the letters that go in the sign at 6th and Laurel. It still says there's a 4th of July celebration coming up. We can get that out, and I can have him put in something advertising the.
Or a banner around one of those. I just think catching the market that's going back and forth, they're like, maybe they're looking to expand their business, maybe they're looking to start a business. We can, just a way to capture that market.
We can tailor some of our social media posts and things like that we'll be putting out. We can tailor some of that we will tailor some of that to this, obviously. A banner,
It's hard.
well, a banner might be expensive. That's the other side of it too, is that a customized banner is probably going to cost what the mailers are going to cost.
Have you tried the college? They usually will do a discount.
We haven't, well, happy to look into it. Yeah. I mean, hasn't been turned on yet, so we've got a little bit of time.
Well, and I think the other thing is Lakes Printing is going to design a mailer. So it's probably easy enough for them to just readjust it into a poster size. So,
I'm just wondering if we wanna just up the amount a little bit to have a little bit of buffer for other printing besides just the mailer. I don't know what the amount.
I'm all for spending more money on marketing for this because I think $1,750 is short for the amount of money we're trying to spend. I don't know if if a poster is going to be the most effective, but I think social media is very effective if we target it for a specific area. That's not being proposed right now. And a month from now would probably be a little late in the game for starting that, but
I'm sensing some no votes for 1750 bubbling up here. Kelly?
Yeah, let's just make it.
Go to 25?
Yeah, let's go 25. Mr. O'Day says 25.
So we're up to 2,500. Do I hear 26? Do I hear 26? No. So we have a motion where we have a friendly amendment in a second to change the 1,750 to 2,500, which will help us explore banners, other opportunities to advertise this grant as we're going forward. Any discussion?
Just one comment, and I'll look to Riley probably for this. Riley, do you do any geofencing with your events downtown?
We do, yeah, on Facebook.
So
A lot of our advertising is targeted to.
it's just another avenue. Geofencing notifications pop up to people using internet platforms inside of a certain area. So if they're already using that, that's another way to certainly target that area. So if they're already doing that, we can work with you guys to get some messaging out within that. That's just another thought, but.
All right, any other discussion on the $2,500 to market the program? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up.
Mr. Chair, clarification. So just what I'm hearing for marketing is we're going to do the direct mailer. We'll work with Lakes Printing on that. We're going to do some boosting of social media is another thing that you would like us to use that money for. And then thirdly, I'm hearing maybe check into banners, posters. Is there anything else for marketing?
Yeah, so everything we discussed here, I think we should use that free sign downtown that Brainerd Community Action still is talking about the 4th of July in for some reason. But
the 7th.
But I think ultimately the 1750 is for the everyday direct mail. The additional 750 is for ideas like that. But you, Tyler, Jennifer, work with Mary Devine Johnson, work with Riley, figure out how we can get the message out best to downtown business.
And we also have the fair coming up too, within the timeline of the due date.
Right, Jennifer, fair booth, you sit there for 10 straight days. All for
Perfect.
I can have them in the cattle barn.
Oh, that's it. Put them in the cattle barn.
Connie's there anyway.
Cows as banners.
Dual
and
duty.
Turn them loose in the fair.
But the additional 750 is just like, let's do what's best, what comes up as we get this thing going.
Thank you for the clarification.
Moo.
All right, that brings us to 6C, Ddbc quarterly update. So come to the microphone, make sure it's on, and then name and address, Riley. It is on, all right.
Hi, Riley Weber, 612 Front Street. I guess I was just kind of prepared for you guys to ask any questions you might have based on the report. We have been working pretty hard on our podcast. That's kind of gotten off the ground really well. Our first series just completed, so 4 of the 12 episodes we promised are out. And then we are now kind of focusing on the promotional videos. So we're kind of targeting different downtown businesses to start working on that project to talk about why they've decided to move to downtown Brainerd or why they've taken over businesses in downtown Brainerd. So that's something we are still kind of figuring out how we're going to produce those, but that's kind of what we've been targeting right now. So.
Okay, any questions of the reports from Ddbc? I want to say I loved your 4th of July float. It was amazing. It was my favorite float by far.
Well, thank you for taking that over, I guess.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any questions? I mean, there is a written report in the packet.
I guess I just have a question. You have 12 promised, what was it, the podcast?
Yeah.
Do you guys plan on just finishing those up within the calendar year, or?
Yeah, ideally, so we release them bi-weekly. We just finished our first series on mental health and mindset. Our next series is going to target marketing and branding for small and micro businesses. We're really trying to focus instead of like making them so general, we're targeting them to the smaller, like maybe it's just a business owner in their store alone, and it's not, what's the best way to spend their money on marketing. And then for the fall, we plan on focusing on financials, QuickBooks, things like that, and then also human resources. So I believe with a biweekly calendar, they'd all be released before the end of the year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Look out, Joe Rogan, we're talking human resources.
Going viral.
And then,
With a catchier
sorry.
title for it.
Oh, hi.
Oh, sorry. You've had a couple of business after hours kind of set up. How is that going? What's the feedback?
They're going really well. Our first one, we had about 25 attendees, all downtown Brainerd business owners. The second one was a little bit smaller. I think we had 14. We have really great discussions out of them. Like Marie kind of mentioned, we've informally talked about the deed funding and who might be interested in downtown Brainerd and participating in those funds and applying for it. And we are just going to kind of talk about that more and what we see for downtown. We've been proposing kind of a facade improvement just as new businesses come downtown and as other more mature businesses kind of want to update their storefronts. That's something we really want to focus on in 2022 and 2023.
Okay. So the feeling right now is a facade is what everyone's kind of looking for, or is there a couple different things?
I think mostly facade.
Well, it's just at the last social, we just, kind of informally brought up this deed funding, and it kind of brought up some discussion of other business owners being like, hey, I've thought of doing this. And so I just think it's a great way to get the word out about different programs and things. And it's just an opportunity to informally share things and just get caught up with other business owners where you might be stuck in your store most of the time. So I think they've been really effective. At least I've enjoyed them. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so we plan on doing them quarterly, so we'll have our next one in September and then our final one of the year in December. So, and we did have one pre-COVID, so it's kind of the feedback we've gotten is, like Marie said, we don't always get to talk to each other during the day because we are stuck in our stores. So it's just a good excuse. And our attendance has been great, and we look to continue them even beyond 2022. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, any other questions, comments? All right, thanks, Riley.
thank you guys.
That brings us to item 7, staff reports. Executive Director of the EDA, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. You do have a written report in your packet, but just want to highlight a couple of things. The purchase on the industrial park land, we did enter into that purchase and development agreement. The VCV, who is purchasing the land, has 180 days to do their due diligence. I've not heard from them since. I did reach out via email a couple of weeks ago, just reminding them of what is in the purchase and development agreement. They're listed out in your report, and also reminding them that the due diligence, they have until August 30th, and when the August EDA meeting date is, so that they're prepared to come before you with the criteria prior to the end of that due diligence, and I'll keep you posted on that. One of the things in all of the agreements with our consultants is a quarterly meeting, so that has been scheduled for July 13th. I'm really looking forward to that. I think the 4 agencies can have a good discussion about what they're working on, and maybe there's some synergy between what's going on. I specifically think of, what we learned from Jennifer Haskamp this morning and what Visit Brainerd is doing for marketing, and maybe there's some overlap there that can be used. The other thing that I just wanted to mention too, Eric Charpentier and I had a meeting with Dave Puringer and Becky LaPlante and then Bruce Buxton, just to talk about his existing buildings and also some new potential opportunities. I think Dave's really looking at ways that he can invest in his property, so I thought it was a really good discussion. Then last but not least, in your packet, I also included the conflict of interest disclosure. Deed is requiring that all EDA members and subcommittee members fill out that disclosure prior to any decisions being made on the Deed Main Street Revitalization Program. If you could please print that out, sign it, and get it back to me. You can scan it, you can drop it off, but it is in your packet. If you would like me just to email it to you directly, I'm happy to do that. And just know that before we make any decisions on funding, that must be completed. And that's all I have.
Shouldn't we wait until we know who has applied, before we say we have no conflicts of interest with who has applied?
That's a good point. I'll reach out to Don Hickman. I just know he said to have it done before any decisions were made, but I'll reach out to him, and maybe that's a nice gap between when we get the application closing and before they're actually awarded.
Because I know some expected applicants that I would maybe have to call potential conflicts of interest, but I don't know if they're going to apply. So I can't fill this out until
Right.
we know who does or does not apply. I don't think any of us can.
Sure.
Anybody who fills this out before the applications are turned in would be filling it out erroneously, in my opinion.
Point taken. Sounds good to me.
All right, any comments, questions? No? Well, I will note Bitcoin is up over $20,000 now, so I'm surprised VCV isn't moving faster on their development.
Probably because it's down 70% from when we had that discussion.
Oh, right, I forgot about that part. That brings us to the next item, HRA Director, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Just a couple of updates today. As you've heard, the HRA did agree to put $20,000 of our general funds into this matching grant for the deed revitalization program. We're very excited about that. A couple of just points of clarification, a little bit different than the ARPA funds that the EDA just approved. With our funds, we do always have to make sure that they fall within Minnesota State Statute 469. That is what governs our authority. So as the subcommittee with the EDA makes recommendations, we will just need to do our due diligence, make sure that they do fit within statutes so we can do that. Typically it's revitalization, redevelopment, housing. All of those projects are great for us, but we just want to make sure that any funds that we're utilizing are fall within 469. So just want to clarify that. Second point of clarification, our board did put that stipulation on our 20,000 at aiming at projects that are coming in to apply at 50,000 or less. The subcommittee did open the $80,000 from the ARPA funds up to those project costs of 100,000, and then with that caveat that Jennifer mentioned, that the emphasis will be on those smaller projects. So just wanted to clarify that our 20,000 is a little bit separate, but hopefully they can all play together. But we're really excited about the opportunity to be able to participate in this program. And again, thank you to Chair Johnson, who sits on our board as well, for bringing that to our board and getting that rolling. So second thing that we do have that I just want to update you, we are scheduled to have our first loan closing for our Crow Wing County Housing Trust Fund today, which is really great. It'll be a down payment assistance loan, someone that's purchasing a home within Crow Wing County, that we're able to help with down payment assistance to help keep their payment or their mortgage insurance maybe a little bit sooner to fall off there. Great candidate. We're really excited to finally get to a finish line on that. We've been working on this for over 2 years actually. So pandemic aside, we're just thrilled to get some dollars moving, and we do have a number of projects in our pipeline, and certainly continue to talk to developers. Thrifty White Building we are in discussion with to potentially utilize some of these funds as well if that project moves forward, which would be great. And we'll continue to look for those opportunities with our developers in and around Brainerd to hopefully spur some interest. It's 0% money, which where interest rates are rising right now, that is the best deal that we've got other than grant dollars. And they are not grant dollars. So we think we've got a good product. We're excited, maybe not for interest rates to be rising, but we're excited to have a product that's at 0%. Other than that, John, if he wants to chat, he can talk about kind of where we're at with Brainerd Oaks. It's in your report. Brainerd Oaks sold the developer. We've got 66 lots sold to that developer out of that 81. So we are continuing to truck along there. Serene Pines has 19 of the 23 sold to the developer, and Del Mar has 3 of the 7. We are continuing to work with that developer. They've got some just inquiries from the MPCA that we're working through, and I think we're on a path there to continue on and make everybody happy there. And just, again, thrilled with the amount of houses that we've been able to put up in the last 4 or 5 years with that. Other than that, if anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
All right, thanks, Eric. And yeah, thanks for clarifying to the commission that the HRA dollars are required to be spent under HRA requirements, this, whatever the state and federal law is. But we have, Kevin Yeager is also a commissioner on the HRA and on the subcommittee, so he'll be keeping an eye on that for us, I think. Any questions of the HRA, Mike?
Yeah, it looks like we're running low on available lots, which is, it's good.
It's a great problem.
Do we have any perspective on expansion or, I know we talked about Northtown a while back. There's a third of it or so to the west that's.
Yep, and I can re-engage with Tom on that, see what his plans are. We're working with Level Contracting on potentially eating up a little bit more. There's an outlot in Brainerd Oaks that we'd like to get into their hands to potentially keep building out, and that would likely look at twin homes, so a little bit different model, but same builder. And we'd hopefully get a number of twin homes into that outlot. We're continuing to work on infill, so as we review what tax forfeited lots are available in Brainerd proper, we do currently have two that Habitat is looking to purchase, two additional ones. They just purchased one. So those are the opportunities, potentially, if some of the Roberts land that the Public Utilities Commission is looking to purchase, there might be some opportunity there for development as well, for single family or other family style homes. So always looking for those opportunities, and we certainly know that there's a big chunk of land southwest Brainerd that had been for sale. I don't recall if it's still up actively listing, but we're trying to work with our developers to look at those other opportunities. I know Level and then Thomas Allen Homes, they are looking for more land. So we'll do our best to promote that in the city.
Great, thank you.
And I'd like to add, Eric, we just did a little bit of chainsaw planning over at the HRA.
We did.
A little chainsaw. And one of the strategic goals that came out of it is the HRA is interested in acquiring land to have site control to work with developers to get things developed, as opposed to hoping developers can find land to kind of cut out that work as that middleman. But we'll see how that goes moving forward. But we're definitely, the HRA does have the eye on the dwindling number of lots available for this project, and we're working on what's next for housing in Brainerd. Any other questions? Does High Tech want to acquire the Mills land and just build a bunch of houses? Okay, hearing no other questions, move on to commissioners' comments, questions. Commissioner O'Day.
I don't think I have anything to add today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bevins.
Nothing to add.
Commissioner Beazer.
Nothing to add.
Commissioner Kirsch.
Nothing here.
I have nothing. That brings us to 9, adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Everybody take care.